Welcome to Security Heroes, a podcast by Athena Security. We share real-life stories to help connect you to real heroes in the security world. I am your host, Lisa Falzone. Warning, the following recording contains potentially disturbing content. Listener discretion advised. Joining me today is Chuck Andrews, who is a seasoned master Texas law enforcement officer and former chief of police, having served in law enforcement since the early 1980s, and who is now an internationally renowned security advisor, influencer, and strategist who holds numerous senior roles with companies and boards and various global security networking roles. Chuck has a master's degree in security executive management, and in fact, he's so accomplished, it would be impossible to cover his CV in the time that we have. He founded his own security network and publications business, and somehow even finds the time to lecture as a graduate professor in the computer science department at Sam Houston State University, and pull off Texas Night with almost 4,000 of his friends last month in Texas at GSX, which I was at, which was an awesome event, by the way.
Thank you.
So anyway, just wanted to welcome you to the podcast. So excited to have you on. Chuck, welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here. I'm recovering from GSX, so Texas. Still, I haven't even been able to physically spend the time behind a keyboard and answer all their inquiries, thank yous, condolences. Chuck, here's a picture. Chuck.
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for your time. I know you're a busy guy.
All good. Glad to be here.
And I had to wear a cowboy hat and a cowgirl hat in your honor.
You look good, Lisa. You look good.
My dad's actually a proper cowboy, though. He played polo. We rode horses all our lives.
You know how expensive it is with your vet bills.
I know.
Horses, right?
And we birthed several horses too. So we had colts and imprinted them and everything.
Wow.
So
wow, you got to do the whole California cowgirl thing. That's cool.
Exactly. Running, galloping on the beach is my favorite. So
yeah, that's kind of a very special moment, especially with nobody around you.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into the questions. So Chuck, can you share with us the first moment in your career when you realized you had directly contributed to saving a life?
Well, I get to start really early in this profession, right? As a law enforcement police explorer at the age of 13. So I rode out on patrol with officers. I mean, I've done CPR, I don't know, probably 30, 40 times on people throughout, my career. Everybody died except one person, right? And I have to laugh at that because unless you've actually done it, you can't appreciate it, right?
Totally.
What it takes as part of that. And that was probably a young police officer, but there's probably hundreds of moments as a law enforcement officer, you're acting as a set of eyes and ears. And when you're riding patrol shotgun with a patrol officer out on patrol, you are that person's eyes and ears as they approach a vehicle on a traffic stop. They enter a home on a domestic violence. They're involved in ag robbery, and they're responding to the scene, and a perimeter is set up and looking for things like cover and concealment. One stops a bullet, one does not. Mm-hmm. So I remember distinctly as a law enforcement police explorer out on patrol, it was a traffic stop on State Highway 288, which is right outside of Houston. So the entire Houston population on the weekends would come through our town and go to the beach. I mean, like thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So we worked traffic and lots of dope and DWI drivers and people that are wanted for outstanding tickets. An officer made a traffic stop on a car, and the car was loaded down with people. Now, acting as the eyes and ears, and this was at probably 1 a.m. or 2 a.m, and literally sitting on the reason why they call it shotgun, right? You got the driver on the left side, and on the right side, it's referred to as riding shotgun because there's a shotgun that sits there mounted vertically a Remington 870. As an explorer, we got to shoot with the officers and qualify with them from time to time, and they would teach us all those skills. Now, if you're a young man from the great state of Texas, you got your first 22 when you were 5 years old.
Yeah.
And then you graduated to a 410. And then from there, you worked your way to a 20 gauge and then a 12 gauge and then long guns and handguns. So right. You already know how to shoot, and we got to practice with them. And I was a pretty big kid, bigger than most of the police officers there. So they'd ask me to get out of the car when they got into, let's just say, a tussle. Mm-hmm. People were in the car. I took notice. The officer walked up to the car and they were giving him a hard time, which was deviating his attentions away from hands. This is what kills you in the line of duty. Someone can grab a gun, grab an instrument, anything in the manner of it's used to cause harm. So I'm watching as someone has a pistol and he's pointing it on the shotgun side, the right side, the passenger side of the vehicle, pointing it to the ground. And he's sticking his arm out because he doesn't want the officer on the driver's side as he's approaching the vehicle. And I see the gun. So I literally take the Remington 870 and point it at the back of the head of the guy in the car. And I yell out the officer, gun, gun, gun. Mm-hmm. And at that point, he takes out his weapon. And then I've already called on the radio system so he wouldn't have to use his hands, take away from the gun. So the radio system to call for backup. And backup got there, and we did what's like a controlled felony stop, got everybody out. It was a stolen gun. There's people wanted for warrants. This usually unfolds like that. That's the only thing I can specifically remember as a kid riding patrol was the first event. Because otherwise, this guy probably, he would have shot the officer, right? Yeah. In which case I would have shot him as well, and was very well prepared to do that. I was 16 years old at the time.
Wow.
So that's the first one I can remember. There's lots more.
Yeah. You want to share another one that kind of sticks out in your...
Well, let's do one that's positive, shall we?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Miss, I think your name literally was Miss Jones, got responded to a medical call. So in law enforcement, it's not the ambulance that gets there first. It's not fire rescue that gets there first. It's law enforcement officers. So when we arrive on the scene, we have to triage within seconds of what we're going to do, who gets help first, blah, 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 blah. And myself and now retired Denver police officer Gene Charla, good, long, dear friend of mine, we both responded, went in the trailer, full cardiac arrest, full respiratory arrest, an elderly lady. And so I got on the head, he got on the chest, and off we go. And we were actually, this is the one situation where CPR actually worked. And you have to be very careful on seniors not to crush their chest plate and their xiphoid, right? Mm-hmm. You have to be very careful and sensitive to that. So we were able to save her life. And then I got cookies every Friday for the next year at the police station. Literally.
Her?
Yes.
From her?
From Miss Jones, yeah. So
very uplifting story. Love it.
Yeah, it's good, right? And listen, I was in community affairs, public relations. I was the crime prevention officer, and I happened to be working patrol that day to help out patrol operations. If I'm out and about in a marked unit, I would drop to various calls and assist. And if I was closest on a couple of shootings that I was on, I was the first officer on the scene treating someone who had been shot 10 times on one particular call. So anyway, let's leave that on a positive note, right? At least.
Yeah. Well, actually the whole point of the podcast is to have, think about, and tell the positive, heroic stories of people in the security industry. So thank you so much for your service.
Mm-hmm.
So how did these experiences shape your approach to various roles you've taken on in the security industry?
So it's about the people, which you can probably figure out with Friends of Chuck, right? Friendships, relationships. It's about the people. So here's what I learned from law enforcement. To be a good cop, I spent 4,000 hours in a police car as a law enforcement police explorer. What did I learn? What was the most important thing? I didn't know it at the time. It was about watching human behavior, watching people, respecting people, being a chameleon to their world, their culture, their language, and their situations, so you could get the best out of those people in the worst of situations. I leveraged and translated that to my law enforcement career, which is a very successful career. And then I leveraged that again into the business world and into the security world.
Right.
So that theme resounds as that common denominator across our industry, which is about the people more than anything else. So that's what I've learned that's really the most important, is that learning about human behavior and relationships and the importance of those relationships.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about how human behavior plays a part in helping prevent crimes from happening.
So in terms of preventing crime or risk, so in the law enforcement world and policing world, we call it crime. In this world, which you and I are in, the security world, it's about risk and risk mitigation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, both.
Yep. So on the crime side, it's about building relationships with people so they will talk to you. So as a law enforcement person out on patrol, you have information. And with information, you can legally, because you're acting under color of law, you have all these rules and constrictions on Code of Criminal Procedure, state constitution, U.S. Constitution, and case law, right?
Yeah.
What you can do and what you can't do. You can't force people to talk if they don't want to talk to you, especially now. Well, without that cooperation, you can't have the information you need to form legal grounds, reasonable suspicion or probable cause, right? Or what we call the totality of circumstances then and there existing to act on legally. So it's a tough criteria on fighting the crime side, but you need that relationship to get that information so you can legally act. If you do not have cooperation of people in our profession, all kinds of people, which means you have to conform yourself and be respectful to those people, even to the worst of humanity. You have to be respectful in order to get the information you need to act within the legal parameters. So that's the crime part of it. So on the security side of it, it's not that much different. You've got to work with all kinds of people and you got to have information, but the criteria is nowhere as stringent as it is acting under color of law on this side. It's much harder to be a cop than it is to be, if you will, a security officer or an investigator in corporate America, right? The rules of civil play are very, very different. So does that kind of answer your question? It's all about the people again and getting the information.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I mean, a lot of people on the podcast have talked a lot about, an empathetic approach in talking people down, or just really having that, not being so authoritative, being less authoritative and more empathetic.
Absolutely.
Especially in hospitals. We do a lot in hospital security, especially that, because usually the perpetrators there they don't mean to be perpetrators. So it's like they're having a mental health crisis, or,
somebody's dying, a family member in the emergency room, and they're just being human, right? And you've got to learn to be able to mitigate that with the tone of your voice, your body language, right? And the training that goes along with it. That's a tough space. It's a really tough space. They're there to protect, obviously the employees. And I think you have to do it with layers, right? Like y'all's technology is a layer, right? We talk about hardware, and then now we're talking about security operation practices, but then there's that human piece, right? And I think that's a big chunk of what is missing today, not only in healthcare, but in many other verticals as well. So yeah, it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, no, totally. And a lot of people get worried, about AI replacing people. And it's like, actually, because of that EQ aspect, I don't think security officers are anywhere near in danger of being replaced by AI. AI is just going to help augment them and make them more effective.
Agreed.
But you absolutely need that empathetic approach, because you're dealing with humans, and humans act like humans, and you don't really want an AI or a robot dealing with that situation. Ideally,
you know what, Lisa, I still think, look, if you're going to replace a choke point of entry, whether it be perimeter or exterior, or otherwise you'd have some with a cognitive ability to verify an ID, Now you have a camera with AI who can look at those credentials, right, with a voice down system and actually be able to control that situation.
Totally.
A lot of that being replaced. So I think if you had to put a percentage around like an actual human being being replaced by that technology, right? And remember, it's all success is really built around moving closer. We got to get away from being reactive. At minimum, we have to be intervening. At best, proactive, preventative. This is where we need to be right here. And at
100%.
minimum, we got to be acting in real time on the situation. Being after the fact is just really unacceptable. But I think you'll see probably 15 to 16% of the guard force affected by that specific technology, because it's 24/7, cheaper. You got live monitoring, you got analytics running, AI. It is a better use of money in certain circumstances. Other ones you really need a human being with some cognitive decision making. And then it speaks to the company, because if you have a bad ambassador, security officer, ambassador, whoever at that door, think of a doorman in New York. Waste management and doormen run the city of New York, right? Literally. And those guys are there for 30, 40, 45 years, right?
And they're so passionate. They love their job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you work undercover, go talk to you're in law enforcement or in security, go talk to the doorman. He knows everybody, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So he makes a great, what we call, CI, criminal informant, that helps us get the information to go do whatever it is we need to do. But that's the kind of caliber that you want of a person representing your brand, right? It's like you only get one time to make an impression. So if you have the wrong person there, no bueno, right?
No bueno.
Yeah. It's these are all things to consider, case by case, vertical by vertical, industry by industry, literally front door to front door. Look, if you go to a well-known company, maybe like Boeing, right? And you walk in through you're going to see human beings in uniform there, right? You're not going to see this camera system, because I'm sure they want to send a messaging that says, we're warm and cooperative, and whatever we could do, because maybe they can't get answers to questions or directions of where to go. You really need a human being. So, but I think about 15% of the workforce is going to be affected by this tech over the next few years. It's already happening now.
I mean, especially when you think about remote guarding, which we don't do a lot of right now, but we want to. I think it's more cost effective that way. So, and in particular, we work with a lot of hospitals. It's our main vertical. They're always, crunched on costs, and so.
But so trending, right? I keep up with everything that's going on in the security business. Live monitoring business, huge. And if there is such a word, huger.
I agree. I think it's very cool.
Yep.
So what else are you excited about innovation wise?
There's a lot of debate. Texas right now, as you can appreciate, there's a lot of conversation around what are we doing in our schools, in Texas schools. What really works that's long lasting and effective. Lots of debate in this area. I have a lot of colleagues and friends and business owners in the integration business, in the AI business, all these conversations. So, I think I'm excited because I hope in Texas that we can kind of turn the tables. The hardware and software has a role and a play. It has to be meaningful, but you just can't throw a lock on the door and walk away, right? There's much more to it. So hardware and software has to come with a program, pre, intervention, and post, right? So if you're a company and you're in this business, you should bring the entire plan or the entire solution to help out. At least if you do part A, then you need to make sure that part A has APIs to all these other parts, for lack of a better way to explain it. But the part is the whole mental health and behavior part of it completely missing in the schools. We're
Mhm.
going to have to do a whole lot more of that. So I'm excited to see that there's lots of conversation. There's a couple of people kind of leading this conversation and putting it out there, putting themselves out there on the, my platform of choice, of course, is LinkedIn. So you hear a lot of debate, about this. Here's what's ironic, Lisa, is we are talking about relationships and how important that information is, right? You build a relationship. SROs, security resource officers, should be building relationships with these children. And a lot of school districts do it well. Other school districts do not. But
Right.
that's part of the mission, is to understand where a kid is mentally and
Mhm.
physically and socially and academically. I'm excited that I think we're getting a tiny bit of traction, because that has to be a common denominator throughout all school districts in the country. We got to know about those kids and what's going on. And then we have to plug them in to solutions to fix the problem, mitigate the problem, address the problem, and do what we can. Family, money, food, school supplies, peer pressure. What are the alternatives here, right? Peer pressure I grew up with, but I was affected by it like everybody else. I was picked on, but I was still a big kid and they stopped picking on me. But I was picked on because I was a police explorer. So I was referred to as the junior pig or the rat or the snitch, right?
Mm.
And to be honest with you, and I'll be very blunt, I didn't give a shit, because I was very independent as a kid.
Yeah.
And I did not let that kind of crap influence me. My mom was a school teacher in that school district for 40 years. My dad
Right.
was an engineer. You stand up for yourself, but we all had to go through it and
Mhm.
survive through it, right? And so it all boils down to relationships, where we just began this whole conversation. We got to know who those kids are. We have a responsibility, especially in the year 2023, because it was early 1980s when I graduated high school. So, I mean, it's night and day, right? Between that life experience and opportunities, and today, kids trying to manage life and growing up, and two different worlds. So we have to adjust accordingly. Key again is relationships.
Yeah.
It'll always come back to people, both good and bad, both life and death. It's
Mhm.
that extreme. The common denominator is people. So we need to focus on that in a very big way. And I'll always be a proponent of that. In everything that you do, you have to enter the people component of every decision, or a piece of equipment, hardware, software, whatever it is you're selling or doing or practicing. People is the beginning and the end of all of it.
Yeah, totally. Last week, actually, I had a mental health professional on Security Heroes, because it always comes up with anyone I talk to in security. Mental health comes up, so we talked about it more from an ER perspective. But what are your thoughts on, how to solve the mental health crisis in schools? Because I mean, that seems like it's a big component in how to keep schools safer and all that.
I think schools have to be very open and transparent with the things that they're doing. And kids, I remember I went to college and got my first degree. There was actually a counselor, called counselor, right? Not mental health. I think when you use the word mental health, it's like we don't even use, back in those days, it was like kids are retarded. That word is not even used today. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Or
Right. I
the
never knew.
Office of Retardation or Mental Health, Mental Retardation,
Right.
MHMR in
Right.
Texas, right? But even mental health, that has a stigma attached to it as well. Who wants to
Right.
go to the mental health director and
Right.
have these conversations? So I think you have to build it such that it's the right synonym is being used, so kids will gravitate to it and know that it's a healthy thing and it's an okay thing. But if
Mhm.
you want something to be important, and for me, every project that I've ever taken on, and like, if you want it to be important, own it and then execute and make a big deal out of it. And
Right.
that's what every school has to do. And they have to be very transparent about this and literally adopt a program school by school, because rural schools are different than urban schools,
Sure.
right? Latino schools are different from white Anglo schools, right? Everybody needs their own level of a certain needs culturally in order to make them feel comfortable. So yeah, we've got to do more with that in a very big way. And I hope Texas leads the way, given, people forget that, you think of Texas, right? But people around the rest of the country really don't understand how diverse we are in skin color and in language and food. Take Houston, right? Oil and gas capital of planet Earth, period. University of Houston, most diverse university a few years ago in the United States. Right? People don't realize that, right? And that's part of our culture, is our strength is our diversity in Texas. Of course, it's the most friendliest place in the United States. That helps,
And
right?
Chuck lives there, so
I hope to be contributory to that.
Yeah, one thing we talked about with the mental health professional is reclassifying it as wellness checks. Like let's go and get the wellness check, and
I wouldn't even go there. Wellness.
Yeah.
It's like that denotes if you're not well, then go to the wellness, right? Let's call it something like
not
the
mental
Cool
health.
Kids Club. I don't know.
Exactly. Like a little.
Let's come up with it. Let them come up with it, right?
Yeah, it's a little rebrand. It just needs a little bit of.
I think that would be huge. That's a great idea.
Yeah. And what's interesting is specifically in the ER, you have a lot of mental health patients coming in, and some of them do contribute to the violence. But then afterwards, it's like no one's following up with them to see if they're okay until the next time they go into so it's
huge. Maintenance, the greatest failure of everything. Doesn't matter if it's humanity, products, manufacturing, operating discipline management systems, your house, changing the air conditioning, maintenance. And I write about it in my book. It's the most important thing. You can invent a new product, but that doesn't count. What you do with it and how you maintain it, that's what counts.
Totally.
It's every company's nightmare. So you hit it right on the money. Be with that kid throughout the journey, through this entire process with accountability. And that's where maintenance fails, right? And some school districts do it right, and some don't do it right. Everyone's a little bit different. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Why do you think the kids are a lot worse off mentally nowadays than back in the 80s? Yeah.
Terribly so.
Why?
Absolutely. So one of the things I reflect on with my friends now that I came to social media maybe 2007, because I couldn't do it by the nature of my work. And then I reconnected with all my high school friends, or people that I grew up with. And because I was really interested in how people changed, or what they're doing. Things like that really interest me. The deltas that happen between here and there in life. And I took the time to go find these people and actually spend time with them, or invite them to my ranch, or we host a big party here at my house at Christmas time, and to get people together, right, and spend time. One of the things that I realized is, I was born in the early 60s, and when I came around, Vietnam was starting to tail off, right? Once you in grade school. So we were post-Vietnam kids, and then we had to sign up for selective service still, right? In high school, you had to go down to the post office. But we got to live a life of what I call Saturday Night Live, like when Saturday Night Live started, right? Yeah. It's like we had the best of everything in my generation. And we had, rotary phones and pre-Texas Instrument calculator, we've got to experience a little bit of all of this. And so there wasn't, but the point of all this is to say this: we did not have to get drafted into a war. We didn't go into a war. I think Grenada, and I think we backed up the British and the Falklands, and that's it until the Gulf War. So think about it. We're the only generation that didn't have to be in a war, short of Iran, or, flying over there and doing what special forces and special ops does. So, but we were still part of a generation that had to be very mature and responsible, and corporal punishment was still around. So if I heard one person being busted by a paddle from the assistant principal, I heard it 1,000 times, right?
Yeah.
Growing up. So kids today, I think it's our fault because it's our kids, right? It's my kids. Did we spoil them too much? I think we just wanted to protect them from what we experienced, right? And so unless you could just go out there and ride a bicycle without a helmet and not come back till nighttime, and you crash and burn and you rub dirt on it instead of a Band-Aid, and you got to do all those things, that's what they get. They're missing out on what we got to live. Just go to social media on Facebook and you'll see my generation. And in the 70s, we were laying 7 bodies on the sidewalk and then jumping them with our bicycle, right?
Yeah.
And then keep in mind too,
too much protection, I guess, leads to mental health.
Yeah, and you don't want to say that's a bad thing, but at the same time, you have to allow human beings, even as kids, to have these experiences so they work their way up this, maturation scale, right? I've just met very few kids who have met that criteria. And when I do meet them, it's like, who's your dad? And then you realize they're a product of their family unit. So I don't mean to beat these kids up. But it's so different. I mean, I'm 60 years old and I don't work any less than 70 hours a week. My work ethic is solid. It's not work to me.
Sure.
But and now, you hear you can't get employees, can't keep employees, younger generation. I don't want to work graveyard shift. I don't want to work Tuesdays. You hear all this, right? Very different. So, man, my first job was at Sonic and I was 15.
Yeah.
$3.15.
Yeah.
I thought I was rich.
Yeah.
And that was hard work. Hard work. I smelled like a hamburger without exaggeration every single night that I came home because I was cooking. But I learned, I pushed. I feel bad for them. I honestly feel bad.
Yeah, I think work ethic definitely ironically plays a role in mental health for sure. I don't think you were that happy if you're not working hard. I mean, it's kind of hard to be. Yeah, and then I think too many guardrails, not allowing kids to fail. I think that's definitely definitely plays a part. Anyway, I was just curious.
Can I throw one more thing in there?
Sure.
Don't forget that our society has criminalized behavior of children in schools. We have the Texas Education Code, right? Like literally criminal laws, where if you yelled at a teacher back in there, you got a spanking or you got D-haul.
Yeah.
You got D-haul, right? Or you're chewing gum or doing something stupid. Right. And now they've criminalized it. Like you're going to jail.
Oh, man.
So, and that's, I think unfair.
Right.
But it's a response to other things not being available. Where we used to really have a village that took care of everybody, right? My neighbor, my dad spanked my friend Mac, and because we were using our BB guns to shoot birds, and we weren't supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
And Mr. Moore, they were gone on vacation, and they let the kids stay at the house, and my dad brought us over and busted us and the neighbor kids.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
You would go to jail.
Right.
In the year 2023.
Totally.
But you know what? Everybody turned out just fine, great, successful.
Yeah.
No mental health damage done.
Yeah.
It was you can't do that. So now you have to criminalize people. I hate that. I'm still a law enforcement officer today, and I hate that law enforcement is not allowed to do their job. Society's not going to let them do the job that they're supposed to do because of all this stuff that's happened. I realize both good and bad. Law enforcement has to change. I'm a huge proponent of that as a community policing, crime prevention guy and a people person. That's a big deal. But I think that it's going to, the fact that we've criminalized it doesn't solve anything anyway. And law enforcement could just they have to wear cameras. I was pre-camera body cams and all that back in those days. And it's like, and I loved it when we got in-dash cameras in the car for DWI stops, because now a jury could see. I thought it was fantastic.
Right.
And I'm a big proponent. You get more bees with honey, but people forget cops are human. Completely forget. Right. And then, the camera helps juries with you right there, everywhere that you go. My point of saying all this is this: where once an officer could just pull a kid aside and talk to him in a harsh way or in a way that could get him to change his behavior. That's all we're asking them to do. Lesson learned. You cannot do that now. Your choice is to take him to jail, or that's, you can't do that. But that's all the kid needed. That's all that they needed. And I find that really frustrating, because then parents flip out. You're yelling at my kid. It's like, okay, well, just you take him straight to jail. Now he has a record. Now he feels bad. Now he's got mental anguish. Now he's got more peer pressure. Now he's in trouble and he's kicked out of school. All these triggers that happen that just have all these negative consequences, and all that needed to be done, which the officer is not allowed to do, was have a stern talking with that kid. And that's just kind of my philosophy. So,
I mean, I get yelled at all the time. Teachers, some coaches, I don't know. Thank you.
Get out.
Right. All right. Switching gears a little bit. So your brainchild, Friends of Chuck, has garnered a significant network within the security and law enforcement sectors. In its inception, what vision did you have for FOC, and how did you see bridging the traditional gaps in the security community?
So it goes back to relationships, right? Friendships and relationships. So nothing really existed anywhere where the building blocks were based on friendships and relationships. And that's what I wanted to bring out with Friends of Chuck. And through some friends of mine, this whole thing started a long time ago, and it just built on itself. Then, kind of marketing and branding around that. So I spend 35-40% of my time helping other people. And I still do that today. That's not changed. I'm probably mentoring 40 people right now. I'm coaching another 20 people. I'm helping probably 4 or 5 people find jobs right now, right? That's part of being Friends of Chuck, being able to help each other back and forth. It took its own life, right? Its own kind of direction as this thing started to mature and more people wanted to be involved. But it turns out it resonated with everybody, right? Based on the Friends of Chuck mantra, right? Which is dream big. Who doesn't want to? Oh, I'm Chuck. I'm going to dream small. Oh, really? Well, that's disturbing, right? It's like everybody wants to dream big and feel good about that.
Right.
We talk about working, feel good about working, because people want to contribute and they want to be acknowledged for their contribution. They want to move the needle. Dream big. Secondly, know how to have fun. Whatever your situation is, why otherwise do it if you're not having fun, right? And lastly, getting stuff done, as I said before, or as I said,
get done.
Thank you. Because that just takes people to the next level in their growth, right? Get this accomplished. Now they can build off of that. This is being human. And you have to acknowledge that. Nobody in the 14 years has come up to me and says, Chuck, that's the most stupid mantra I ever heard. Or I don't agree with that. Not one single person. Dream big. Know how to have fun and get stuff done. And that's the premise behind it. And it's all built on relationships. Now, let me tell you what that means. Maintenance. One of the reasons my life is so busy is I try to never miss an email. I don't. A LinkedIn message, Facebook message, letter, anything, right? And that's a lot of work. That's the maintenance part of it. You just can't say you're a friend and not show up. In my case, I have 164,000 friends in the business, right? Formally. And that's what I manage with all those different folks all over the world in various sundry ways. So it's about the relationships. And this business doesn't have, and ultimately, I identified, it was clear to me, that's what it boils down to, is the relationships. And nobody can argue with me. Still got to deal with human beings. So why not go to the premise of it all?
Yeah, I also really appreciate how you're an innovative guy and you're trying to bring innovative technologies and you're open-minded. Have you seen when you're mentoring different entrepreneurs, have you, like specifically in the security industry, have you seen what are the responses you've generally seen to innovation? Like I know it all probably depends what type of innovation, but any recommendations you have there?
I mean, I love the innovation, all the new tech. And I'm the guy who is also the critic as to, is it going to work? It doesn't work. And I'm involved in some very, very, very life-altering technologies that are very risky in this space. But if they prove themselves, then I will have moved the needle in every country in the world. That's where I'm at in my life and my security journey of maturation, right? And so I love all that. I have to translate that to a CSO or an organization and be able to say, look, this makes sense because this brings value because please know. But what most companies don't do is tell the bad news. You have to tell the bad news or the risky piece of it. It's like, this is what we can do. And we can do it 87.87% perfectly instead of saying, oh, we have zero false alarms or whatever the case. You have to be honest with those people and learn to speak CSO and understand where they're coming from. And I think you will build credibility, and they're willing to try because they want something, even if it's a bit risky, through a proof of value or proof of concept. Less talk, more action. Let it prove itself out. So I'm a big fan of trying new and innovative things. And I think corporate America has a responsibility to allow vendors to come in and build the relationship to do that, because we need that trial and error to the benefit of the entire community. Businesses, people, society, law enforcement, right? So, companies like, I'm watching really like Fusus, right? For law enforcement agencies, all these sensors coming into one pane of glass. Companies like that I'm watching. Very interesting to see what they're doing and how well that they're doing it. But they can make a significant difference with greater reach, with higher accountability and immediate response from prevention, and the buck stops right at intervention, right? Where you have all these sensors, LPR, camera systems, all this stuff for decision making. That's what you're going to see more of in the future. Companies like that and a whole bunch of other companies doing stuff that are not even on the radar or public.
No, I love that you're really pushing that. You're well networked, and I think the security industry needs that because it is so critical. Because I think if you go into security, generally you're risk adverse. And so that's why, and so it's really awesome to be able to talk to people like you that really want to push the envelope. I think being honest with your testing data is absolutely critical. Sometimes in Silicon Valley, there's definitely a culture in Silicon Valley where it's like, oh, we can, we're 100%. It's like, no, well, nothing's 100%. Also the CISOs, sometimes I've noticed are definitely like, well, there's this one use case where it could not work here. And it's like, well, nothing is 100%, and so.
And listen, I was a CSO, and so I had those people come to me
Right.
And they go, oh no, we have a 0.001 basis point loss.
Right.
You want to quantify that for me? Well, we don't really have that. That's just kind of what we came up with. Can't
Yeah.
do that. You got to be prepared. So I know it from the law enforcement perspective. I know it from the security perspective. Now I know it as a vendor perspective and an entrepreneur, then innovation and technology. So when you have that span of real world experience that involves millions of dollars worth of stuff and decision making, you can get to kind of the level I'm at to help make really good decisions, right? So I can get involved, with different companies on different innovation. I'm big on bake-offs, right? It's like literally, put your stuff out there and compare it to 3 or 4 others and take the
Yeah. Let the
data.
best,
And
let the best
then,
win.
yeah. And if you have 4 companies, and in those 4 companies, you have 4 CSOs. And I'm picking on CSOs as opposed to CISOs because that's a different approach. But each one of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, number 2 has a relationship with this vendor, and they grew up together. They went to college together.
Right.
And by the way, they worked together before they all moved in their separate ways. And they have relationship, right? And because of that relationship, there's a 95% default, despite the fact that it's not the best product, that they're going to go with it because it's good enough.
Right.
Right. And the better product really is number 4 over here. And this CSO happens to make good discerning decisions, has a bake-off. Don't buy anything without a bake-off. I'm a huge fan of it. And then look at the ROI. Look at the value prop. Look at procedurally, right? Does this technology require a human being with it? Does this technology require, a in-house server, or could it be a SaaS model? Right? You got to go through all this stuff and look where your IT people sign off on it, right? And that's all these different things. And so it's all very different, but still relationships are still the most powerful thing. In the end, it's not necessarily the best product. It's really the best product that it'll work, but it's the relationship that really gets it over. That's the power of a relationship. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're totally right. And especially, I would say, in this industry versus other industries, I'm surprised of how important the relationship is.
Oh,
And I think it's partly because you're selling, like, security is a very trust-based culture, right? So you're selling trust and you want to buy from a trusted person because you're selling security. So I think the relationships are absolutely critical. I mean, I used to think it was kind of old school advice, but now having been in the security industry for a while, I'm like, definitely in this industry is absolutely critical. So totally agree.
to a fault.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Because they do you're right. They like to sometimes buy from their friend from college or high school or whatever.
And look, I've built enough of a neutral territory across different verticals that I get to see a little bit of everything. But I do see a few things that are more interesting and more powerful. I think you get more done behind the scenes than you do in front of the scenes, right?
Totally.
For me anyway. And there's lots of opportunity out there. As a CSO, I wanted a bake-off. I want to use it for a while. Let me prove itself out. Could there be some customization that goes with it? So, but everybody's a little bit different. And I've seen one transaction. I have literally seen 1,000 transactions and the way they go.
Yeah.
And some CISOs that won't talk to anybody. And it's just it's kind of amazing to me. But that's where, like in my book, yes sir, strategy, intelligence, relationships, SIR, you need that intelligence information to form a good strategy. So when you talk to the relationship, you understand how they approach opportunities to look at new innovation and technology. Make sense?
Absolutely. Totally. So we're getting near the end here, and a couple more questions for you. With the rapid advancements in technology and evolving global dynamics, do you envision the landscape of security and risk mitigation changing in the next 10 years? Or how do you see it changing in the next 10 years?
Ooh, the next 10 years. Well, I think AI, everybody's definition of artificial intelligence is different, and
Sure.
more so its application in real world. So I think we better be prepared for a lot of abuse with the spoofing, right? That is going to happen. It'll be like artificial intelligence. You're
Sure.
not going to be able to discern between reality and non-reality and decision making and capabilities. So in the next, we're going to have systems and processes that validate accuracy, detection, truth, reality as to what's really going on. And that's not being addressed right now. Everybody's just pushing stuff out. But there's going to have to be some safeguards in place to validate that the data or the video is real, the person behind it is real. It's amazing right now. I mean, I have a picture here of myself that AI is responsible for producing in milliseconds of me as a different nationality. And different clothes and garb, all just by taking data that's out there, right? Nothing more than what came from the wild, wild west, the World Wide Web. I was pretty shocked at how accurate, how clean the pixelization of that image was. I mean, it's perfect. So unless you get to the metadata, you're really not going to know. So we're going to have to get more granular on the validation of what you hear, see, smell, and touch in the industry. That is where opportunity, by the way, is going to be by building those kinds of systems within, checks and balances. Make sense?
Yeah. So just in conclusion, if you have one piece of advice or guiding principle every organization should abide by when thinking about their workplace security processes, what would it be?
People, it's easy. You have to factor people in everything you do. And I said it earlier. The worst is people and the best is people. So that has to be that, whatever that process, it has to involve, people. So, I mean, look at the war that's going on right now in Israel. We're in the year 2023, and it's like, really? We really have to go to war again? I mean, and people are just, everybody's kind of beside themselves. So this is ridiculous, man. We live in a world where it's a whole lot more. There needs to be a lot more, as Lee Otten and Tim Wenzel say, kindness. The kindness games, right? There needs to be more kindness, which I'm a huge advocate of, and peace and joy and love and helpfulness and advocacy and partnerships. I'm a huge fan of partnerships in everything that I do. Not about the money, it's about the journey. Everybody forgets it needs to be about the journey, because you can't take all this stuff with you, right? It's about family and friends. Ultimately, that's all that you have. And on that note, that's why I started Friends of Chuck, family and friends.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for all your heroic actions and everything that you give to the security industry. I know the security industry in general is a better industry because of you. So thank you. And it's been an honor to have you on the podcast.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, awesome. Talk soon. Security Heroes is brought to you by Athena Security. To find out more about Athena Security and how we help save lives through our weapon detection solution, visit www.athena-security.com. And then make sure to search for Security Heroes in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Athena, thanks for listening.